camp, which is in exactly 1 month. So welcome to come. Come for the camp, stay for the masters. That's our new slogan. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some, I know it's late, so I'm going to give you some bullet points of what I learned researching this theme. And you can go to the first slide. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, and by the way, I saw I was third on the list. It's midnight Georgia time, so I knew I'd had to have pictures in my talk to keep me awake. So hopefully it works for you too. I wanted to talk tonight about the one thing that makes a gate useful. If you don't have this one thing, it's useless, as this gate is. And that is a fence or structure or wall that connects one side of the gate to the other side of the gate. And so a gate is a useless thing without a fence or a wall. And we know, we've heard from the talks already, that the gate is like the key. It's like the Acts 2:38 to get into the kingdom. And you could think of the wall as the wall necessitates going through a gate, right? That's the whole point. And the wall, if you like, points us to the gate. And in Isaiah 59, it actually says, we grope for the wall like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. So, it's kind of like if someone wants to know the Lord, they might end up groping the wall. And if they keep investigating, they're eventually going to find the gate. And you could say the walls are like the word, right? Pointing to this Acts 2:38 experience. Turn to Hebrews chapter 13. It's a great thing about the gospel is that the Lord's made available to anyone. Anyone is able to know our God. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 9. It says, "Do not be carried about with various and strange doctrines, for it is good that the heart be established by grace, not with foods which have not profited those who have been occupied with them. We have an altar from which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned outside the camp. Therefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered outside the gate. Therefore let us go forth to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach." So I found this interesting because we know our camp theme and how we enter the gates and all that, but this is implying that we need to leave it. If you go to the next. So this is Jerusalem, and in the kind of up here where Jesus was crucified, Calvary, outside Jerusalem, outside the walls. And these verses in Hebrews 13 are telling us we have to go there to be able to enter the gates, kind of like leaving the camp to be able to enter into the kingdom. And we have to follow the Lord, through the waters of baptism, representing his death, partaking of his death. We have to go there before we can get into the gates. It represents humility, right? No one can just walk up to the gates and say, I'm going in, I think I'm pretty good, I'm going to go in. We have to kind of go to this place. We have to humble ourselves. We have to humble ourselves through the waters of baptism and put to death our own life. We have to be prepared to do that. Once we're inside the camp, if you like, we have this security. Next. So Psalm 125 is, the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people from this time forth and forever. So the Lord is all about securing us. Next one. One verse before the camp theme, we have a strong city. God will appoint salvation for walls and bulwarks. So the walls are like salvation and security. And then one more. In Job it says that, have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has on every side. So there's this security and salvation that comes by being inside these walls. But the walls they're not there to confine us. And I'll touch on that in a second when we finish up. But we are here because we want to be. Like, we're all at camp here because we want to be. There's no aspect of compulsion in this. We are willingly following the Lord. You might want to turn to Zechariah chapter 2. And we'll also, it's up on the screen as well, though I wasn't sure if you could read it. It says, "Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. So I said, 'Where are you going?' And he said to me, 'To measure Jerusalem, to see what is its width and what is its length.' And there was the angel who talked with me, going out, and another angel was coming out to meet him, who said to him, 'Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, because of the multitude of men and livestock in it. For I, says the Lord, will be a wall of fire all around her, and I will be the glory in her midst.'" So now, basically my talk is about what I learned about walls, and it's not really what you think. In here it says that the Lord will be, his kingdom will be without walls, because he's going to add more and more people into his kingdom. But that's without physical walls. But it says there, "I, the Lord, will be a wall of fire." And if anyone's heard of computer networking firewalls, that word firewall came from this verse. It was like an Israeli engineer who came up with the term, and it comes from this verse. And it describes that protection, that the Lord has, but also, where else do you see fire? Again, Acts chapter 2, that Holy Spirit outpouring that we're part of. And so we're surrounded by this firewall, the Spirit protecting us. I'm just going to finish on 3 examples. Another aspect here on are we being constrained and confined in these walls, or are we doing it because we want to do it? So you've probably heard of cattle stations and things like that. At least the ones I know in Australia, and I've camped on them before. It was quite bizarre. I woke up in the morning surrounded by cattle. But they don't have, at least the ones I know in Australia, they're so big they don't have fences. It's just like there's a road, there's no fence, there's cattle, but it's huge areas. And this one, just to illustrate, this was the biggest cattle station in the world. It's larger than 4 US states. It's 9,000 square miles. And how are the cattle controlled in these places? Because it's just too vast an area. So how are these cattle controlled? Well, I found out that they bore a well. They just bore a well in the ground, and that well draws those cattle. It kind of makes it that area where they dwell, because they have to have water, obviously, to survive. And they won't stray too far from water when water is scarce. It's kind of like us. So there's something that keeps that livestock where they need to be. The second one, second or third. So we heard in Brother Dave's talk tonight about fear of punishment. That's not how we operate, as he said. We are not like the farms in Australia. I don't know about them here, but in Australia it's all like utes and trucks and sheepdogs scaring the sheep and herding them and getting them where they need to go. It's quite, you see this a lot. I mean, you see the sheep in the background just going, what's going on here? I don't want them to come near me. But these dogs are like nipping at the heels, and sometimes I've been on a farm Chambers farm, they can get a little too fierce and they have to be punished. But this is not how we're treated in the Lord. This is not why we're here. This is not the kind of things going on. So what is going on? Well, we are led. Next slide. We are led by the Lord. And what I really learned in this section is that the old style of sheep herding, not the modern ways with trucks and dogs, was to lead the sheep. And we know the verse in the Gospels, my sheep hear my voice. Well, in the Middle East, those shepherds literally led their flocks like this guy is here, and they knew the sound of the voice. And rather than chasing around, they just led and they followed. And I read interesting examples where if like two shepherds leading their flocks, if they sort of crossed paths or something, it wasn't a big freak out because the sheep just followed their master. Like they heard the voice, the call, and even if the sheep were all mingled, they would self-separate and follow the right shepherd. And that's how it was done in the olden days, and that's what Jesus meant when he said, my sheep hear my voice. I also read that they did a test once where one shepherd dressed in the clothes of those sheep's shepherd, real shepherd, and tried to lead them, and it didn't work at all because it was all about the voice. So basically my point is, what keeps us united? It's not walls or fences, it's the truth that draws us in, keeps us united and focused. Jesus leading us. If you feel constrained or restricted in the Lord, then you're not getting it. Like, you're not close to the Lord, because it just doesn't feel like that. As we all know, when you're walking in the Spirit, you don't even think about I have to do this or I have to do that. It's just this excitement and willingness to go be with the Lord's people, like camps like this, and follow the Lord. So, the other thing is like, yes, the walls provide salvation and definition, and they keep the world out and all that, but when we're inside the camp, we're not looking, we don't even notice there's walls. We're focused inward on that well. And we're not looking, if you are looking, then you're looking for something else, and you'll start to look towards the walls and look over the fence and see what greener pastures there might be. But when you're walking in the Spirit, you're focused on the Lord. Ask, I was thinking about it just being, it's kind of a contradiction. We have freedom, we have liberty. It's not being constrained. Ask Sister Leanne, just that really good testimony this morning. But, ask her if she felt like she had freedom in that phase of her life. Did she feel liberty and freedom and that great peace? No, I bet, or you can ask her after the meeting, it might line up, but I guess that when she came back to the Lord, that's where freedom and peace was. So I'll leave it there. And hand over to